So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, however this video finds you. I'm Chris Pascu. Upon request, I'm going to make this video really quick, but very hopefully comprehensive. So I'm going to be taking a simple load, which is simply from Eugene to Dillon Beach, California. And before I do that, I'm going to pre-trip my truck. Now, we've got a 1-ton truck here with a flatbed, and this is designed to haul pretty much anything. It's got a fifth wheel adapter up there, right there. That's for RVs. It couples into this little bracket over here, right, which is now connected with a gooseneck adapter. So this can haul up to 26,000 pounds, as well as that fifth wheel adapters for 24,000 pounds. Anyway, so this is just a unique truck, a flatbed. It does fifth wheel, gooseneck, and obviously bumper pulls. So that said, I'm going to be using this truck to haul a basic load. It is a tiny home trailer that we'll be pulling. But before I do that, you know, here I am in Troutdale, Oregon. I'm going to pre-trip this truck, just like any other truck. If you've got a vehicle at home that you're using, an F-350, a 450, a 1-ton or bigger, before you go on the road, you want to pre-trip anything you do and prep for the travels, right? So we've just finished a couple oversized loads. I'm going to be pulling that oversized sign off of the bumper and also from the back, because generally you're not allowed to haul or to travel with an oversized sign on there if you're not pulling a load that's oversized. So we're going to be pulling that off. We're going to check the fuel, we're going to check the oil, we're going to check the belts, we're going to check the engine components to make sure that all those things are adequate for the travel. Make sure the lights are operational. We're going to look underneath to make sure that it's clear and there's nothing dangling, no squirrels got to it. You didn't run over anything, those kind of things. You're going to check your tires, you know, your front axles, your front steers. You're going to check your dualies in the back as well. You're going to check your tire pressures, and you're going to check your lug nuts as well and bolts to make sure they're all tight and there's no rust. Obviously, this is a newer unit, so you don't have any concerns, but I've already checked all these things just a few minutes ago. I'm just kind of re-identifying what we normally do during a pre-trip. Lights are important. Electrical, you must have rear lights and rear electrical working and operational. Your 7-way, make sure that works properly as well. And then of course you got to make sure you have adequate equipment like chains in the back. We've got chains in the box here for traveling through snow. Make sure you have straps. We got straps if you need them. Make sure you have additional equipment, like of course if you're going to be doing a backhaul, you might want to have a gooseneck, you might want to have a fifth wheel, you might want to have a bumper pull with a drop hitch. Those things are important. Make sure your license plate is visible and that you've got your insurance paperwork with you in the cab of the truck. And if the truck is registered, make sure you have a current registration. We've got all of our registration and insurance paperwork, including transponder plates here that we use. And so I've got all that equipment ready to go. I've also got, I make sure that I've got enough jackets. Got a reflective jacket, which is crucial for the work that we do. And then my tools back here. And I've got a lot of tools back here, including some tools that I really don't need. Once you ensure that you've got all the things you need for the road, then you can head on down the road and go and hook up to the load that you are assigned, either dispatch. One of the other thing I want to stress out is make sure your flaps are properly secured and that you actually have something that protects the load from getting smacked by the debris from the dualies in the back. So make sure you have flaps that are going to block that as well. Of course, you want to make sure you've got food and various other things that you need, including I've got my lunch bag here, my coffee, and then if you need a bill of lading or if you have bill of lading documentations, make sure you have those. So that said, make sure your phone is charged and you got a full battery life on your phone. You never know exactly where you're going to go and how you're going to get around, and you need that for GPS coordination and for traveling routes. You also need to ensure that you send emails and text messages, and usually the phone is the crucial element that communicates the transportation conditions to clients and to dispatch. So make sure your phone is. I also have to show you a dash camera here, and that's crucial because you never know what goes on the road and how other drivers react, and so having a dash camera helps you to identify areas of concern. I do have a CB here in case we need to communicate in a convoy style, but generally you use your phone pretty much for everything these days. CBs are usually good to have, especially if you're doing oversized loads or communicating with a pilot car. My bill lading paperwork is up here, and of course I've got water and all the other elements I need. I always make sure that I've got a trusty tool here. It's just my quick grab multi-tool. Of course I've got plenty of tools back there that I use for other purposes if needed to be. And make sure you have batteries, for the devices that you're using. If you have lights that are, magnetic lights that need to identify the oversized loads, or at any point you have any equipment that needs to be used on the road and you don't have any batteries, there's no purpose for that equipment. If the batteries run out, you're pretty much stuck without having equipment available to you because you got no batteries. So make sure all those things are done in your pre-trip. Of course, we have a pre-trip inspection sheet that we complete. Once you complete the pre-trip inspection sheet, you take a snap of that and you send it over to us to dispatch, so there's a record of you doing that inspection. And otherwise, there's not much more I can explain. Of course, you've checked the engine, you've checked your tires, you've checked your lights, you've checked your instruments and your equipment, you've checked your bill of lading, your dispatch sheet, and then you're ready to go. Now that you're heading out to your first dispatch load, depending on if you are a CDL driver or non-CDL driver and operating under 150 mile or over 150 mile, you may have to use an ELD system. ELD is an electronic log data system. Now we provide the ELD system for you. If you have one, if you're an independent contractor, you probably have one in your cab. Again, if you're a CDL driver, you must use one. If you're not a CDL driver and you're operating over 150 mile radius, it is recommended that you use one, especially while you're under a authority of our company and that you're operating outside of the 150 mile radius. Now, what does that mean? That means that prior to you leaving, if you are loaded and ready to go and operating under dispatch, meaning you have an actual dispatch sheet order, you must log into your ELD system. As you know, and most people know that are commercial, if the ELD system does not work for some reason, you can go on a paper log for a minimum, I think, or maximum of 8 days or 7 days. However, you must submit a repair or out of service request to the company, and it's a one-time thing and all that stuff. Paper logs were used initially, for documenting logs for commercial purposes since I think 2011 or 20-something, 2012, 20-something. I think 2011, ELDs have been introduced for all semis and commercial loads, and they manufacture a number of ELD systems out there. Garmin makes one, Omnitrax makes another. Those are the two units that we use. Zonar makes another. There's so many other units out there for electronic log data. Some of them require monthly subscriptions. Some of them are a one-time fee. Most of them calculate your mileage automatically and give you a breakdown of how many miles you traveled. Some of them don't calculate the mileage, but it accounts for your over the road travels. You know, your log, official log record is documented through that system that is attached to your unit. In order for an ELD system to be acceptable by DOT standards, it has to plug into your truck. So in our case, we have a Garmin ELD system. It plugs in directly into our computer port down below the steering wheel, and it transmits by Bluetooth to the cell phone that I'm holding, and it actually transmits wirelessly to that unit the specifics of my travels. It knows when I'm moving, it knows when I'm stopped, it knows pretty much the specifics of the vehicle as well. And then when it does not know, it asks you, the driver, to input that information. So if you're off duty, you need to put that in there. If you're on duty, you need to put that in there. If you're running under personal convenience, you need to put that in there. If you're, running close to your hours and you're essentially needing to report yard, move, or you're taking a sleeper break, or a break for rest, or you're doing a fuel stop. All those things you can identify in your ELD log system that's provided to you, or you have in your truck. The important thing about ELD systems is that those systems document to the DOT folks, the weight master, the scale master, the inspectors, what it is that you're doing and how much you're traveling and how many hours you're driving, right? So you must be running legal in order to not receive a violation. So ELD systems are important to have, especially if you're, like I said, a commercial driver or operating above 150 mile radius of your home base. Now, in most cases, like myself today, because I am considered a commercial driver, I am going to use an ELD system, which is my Garmin system that I have. However, because I am not under dispatch until about 4:30 p.m., I actually am going to be running under what's called as a personal convenience status on my ELD, meaning that I am actually traveling to my dispatch location where the load is actually being dispatched to me from. So in this case, I will be running under personal convenience, and that would actually bypass, and you guys are welcome to correct me on your comments if this is something that you see differently, but generally my understanding is at any point that I am not under dispatch, at any point that I am simply not under load, at any point that I'm operating my personal vehicle for whatever purpose, shopping, for traveling between locations, I could run under personal convenience. And so I've been running under personal convenience from my home to my first duty location where I actually am dispatched from. So in this case would be Eugene. I don't actually pick up the load until 3 hours from now. Well, that means that I shouldn't be logging on duty status because I'm not necessarily on duty unless I'm a company driver and my company requires me to drive a personal or a company vehicle. But considering this is my personal vehicle, I'm an independent contractor, I'm going to be using personal convenience until I actually get to my on-duty location where I pick up my first load. When I do get to my location and I pre-trip my trailer and I pre-trip my load, that's when my on-duty status begins. Prior to that, it would be under personal convenience. Especially since I'm going to be stopping to eat somewhere and picking up groceries en route. So at this time, I'm actually heading to my location, but I will be making a few other stops. So would that be fair to say that I am under personal convenience? logic tells me yes, because I am not operating under the company at this moment. So that said, I run under personal convenience. What that means is that I'm going to be protecting my hours from being exhausted. So in my log, I have a limited amount of hours, which is 14 hours per day of on-duty status that I can accumulate. 14 hours I can work on duty, meaning that if I start at 12 or 11 a.m. or let's say 12 in the midday, well, I can go until 2 in the morning and work. That would mean that I can do on-duty related activities for 14 hours, right? So 12 to 12 is 12 hours, and a couple hours after that, meaning 2 in the morning, will be 14 hours. If I start at 8 a.m., whatever 14 hours is from that point, I can operate either driving, loading, being on duty. So that means that if I'm under personal convenience, I am not on duty, and I'm going to keep that hours available for me to drive and use when I'm officially on duty. That's why I like personal convenience. I also like the yard move option on the E-log system or the ELD system. The yard move option on the ELD system allows me to save my duty, my driving time from being exhausted as well. Now, although you can do 14 hours on your day by day on duty status, so 14 hours in a full day, you can only do 11 hours out of that 14 hours on driving. 11 hours maximum you can drive every single day. Now you can do less than that if you obviously if you're going locally, you're not going to do 14 hours, but if you're or 11 hours. But if you're going to go across the country or regional, you're likely going to exhaust your 11 hours driving time within that 14-hour window. So what I said is I like using yard move on the ELD system, because when I do get to my fuel station and I'm actually getting fuel, I am now considered on duty, and I am operating a vehicle under load and dispatch, but I may not be driving on the road. And so the ELD systems allow for what's called this yard move, especially if you're doing 5-10 miles an hour inside of a parking lot. That locks that time frame for yard move, and it blocks out the driving time. So it does not record your driving time or exhaust your driving time or take away from your driving time, but it keeps it into the on-duty time. So yard move and personal convenience is what I like to do every time either I'm off duty working or driving a vehicle that has an ELD system, and or getting fuel, or actually moving less than 15 miles or 20 miles an hour in a parking lot. Because then if I use those to compensate for the work that I'm doing, I'm not exhausting my hours on duty or hours driving. So I recommend you guys do the same thing. Anytime you stop at a gas station, push into your screen there, say, hey, I need to go, I'm going to be in yard move condition. I'm going to get fuel for 30 minutes or 15 minutes. And that does not, now your system automatically will populate, are you still driving? You know, your most ELD systems will recognize when you actually slow down and stop under 20 miles an hour, and especially if you stop your truck, it will tell you, it will give you a reminder saying, are you still driving? And then you can indicate on there, no, I'm not driving, I'm in yard move, I am on duty but not driving. So that stops that on driving or on duty driving status from accumulating and exhausting your time. The reason for that is I'm telling you, you got to use all the resources to give yourself enough time to travel on the road so you do not violate the DOT requirements. Because when you do go through a scale, if they pull your log and you are over your log, you will get penalized. And that goes against your personal license and the company's record. So you must make sure that you manage well your ELD system. And so I'm being honest with you guys. We have been audited a number of times. I have been inspected a number of times personally and by DOT as a company. And we have passed every single time, only because we take the time to actually log our hours to the best ability that we manage to restrict our driving to only certain standards, so that way we get the most out of the ELD use, right? So you got to do the best you can for yourself. Don't worry about anybody else. You take care of yourself and manage your ELD system well. On top of your ELD system, you have to also make sure that you have your bill of lading with you and your dispatch or your trip sheet with you at all times. You must make sure you also have a copy of your certificate of insurance. Now, your copy of your certificate of insurance should be with you in your cab at all times with your vehicle, and that should be something that you know during pre-trip where it is, and usually it's in a folder. In my case, it's in a folder right above my visor there, and that copy of certificate of insurance is current. You must make sure that it's up to date, not canceled, not expired, and so that's something that you do during your pre-trip. And sometimes you renew your policies, or if you're under our authority, you want to make sure that that certificate is still good for that particular unit or that particular driver, or that we have updated our records to have that in the cab. You must also have your registration for the vehicle. So registration, insurance, obviously those are the key elements of passing a inspection when you go through a scale. Now again, this applies to CDL drivers and non-CDL drivers. So anybody that is behind a wheel must have a copy of his insurance certificate or the company's insurance certificate, must have a registration in their cab, and must have a bill of lading of the load that they're hauling that identifies, the pickup location, the drop-off location. Must have your dispatch or your trip sheet, usually shows the particulars on your day-to-day activity, and must have, of course, your ELD if you're operating outside of 150 miles on, right? So that's it. That's it for the ELD. When you're driving, you must have all those things in place. And if you're, like I mentioned earlier, if you're in between loads, you should go under personal convenience if you're operating an ELD in your cab, because your ELD would automatically let you know, hey, are you driving now? And it will start accumulating hours against your log as for driving or on duty. And that means that you're not going to have enough adequate driving hours later when you're under a dispatch if you're going to let yourself automatically be managed by the ELD system. You have to control the ELD system, otherwise it will automatically manage your hours for you. And you may end up driving 3 hours for personal convenience, not putting that in there, and you get to your destination or your dispatch and you only have 6 hours left or 4 hours left, or who knows, depending on how long you've been driving. And that means that you're going to be limited on your on-duty hours. You can adjust those things when you get there if you need to, but I suggest you always take the time to log in your hours before you take off. And if you need to, you can always pull over and adjust your ELD to make sure it's properly identifying what it is that you are doing. One more thing, I was asked to identify this issue as well. A lot of times some of you guys want to know, hey, am I supposed to go through the scale when I'm not under a load? And my answer to that is all depending on the circumstances of your dispatch. Now, if you are not under dispatch, and well, let me rephrase this. If you see a scale, before you go through a scale, generally they say, in Oregon especially, if you're under 20,000 or over 20,000 pounds, you must pull in. So that means that if you're a commercial or non-commercial driver, and you're operating outside 150 miles, or in this case, over 150 miles, it doesn't really matter. If you're operating a vehicle that's 20,000 pounds or more, you must go through the scale. You must inspect your load to the scale master and the weigh master and the DOT folks. And so you got to pull through there if the scale is open. If you're 20,000 pounds or more, meaning your combination truck and trailer. If you're GVRW, your truck may be 7,000 pounds. You may have a load on the back of your flatbed or inside your truck that's 5,000 pounds. Well, 7 plus 5, you're going to add it all up to be 13,000 pounds. So you're not going to be over 20,000 pounds in Oregon. So that means you can get around that scale. You don't have to go through it. The same goes if you're pulling a trailer. If you're pulling a trailer and you are 8,000 pounds in weight on your truck, and the trailer is, let's say, 12,000 pounds, well, you're going to be under 90 or 19,000 pounds, so you're not going to be over 20,000 pounds. So in Oregon, again, you don't have to go through the scale because they put a sign there right at the beginning of the scale house, especially here where I'm traveling, it's in Woodburn, that says if you're under over 20,000 pounds, you must pull in. No matter if it's a rental truck or if it's a personal vehicle, you must come through the scale if you're 20,000 pounds. Now, I'm certain that if you're moving your own personal furniture, not for hire, you can bypass the scale. Again, you shouldn't be going through the scale if you're doing stuff that's personal for your personal use. But if that weight is over 20,000 pounds, they instruct you to go through there. In Oregon. In Washington, I believe it's 15,000 pounds or less. I don't remember. But either way, if you're for hire, operating under dispatch, our policy is you must go through the scale. You must go through the scale every single time the scale is open. If you're operating an ELD, you must go through the scale. If you're under any kind of dispatch, no matter if it's under 20,000 pounds, if you're under a load, you must go through the scale. If you're under personal convenience, like I am right now, I am not under a load, I don't have a trailer behind me, I don't have a load in the back of my truck, I am driving for personal use right now, I will not go through the scale. Plus, I'm only about 9,000 pounds. So no, I will not go through a scale when I am in between loads. When I am driving for personal convenience, there's no reason for me to be inspected by DOT because I am not operating under dispatch. I am not operating under a load. I am actually, right now, I'll be stopping in Woodburn to make some shopping before I continue on my route. So that is considered what I recognize as personal convenience, or the option to apply personal convenience to my ELD. But if you feel concerned or if you don't understand clearly, I do suggest you stop and they will explain this to you. Any scale house that's open, pull in there and say, hey, I have some questions. What do you think about this? My personal opinion may be different than their personal opinion. Our company's opinion may be different than the scale master's opinion. Every single day things change. DOT changes its regulations by the year. Every year they put out new statutes, new federal guidelines that you must understand, and things change all the time. Generally, our company will stand to lose if you fail to pass an inspection. You will stand to lose if you fail to pass an inspection. So I do recommend, if you have a concern, when in doubt, go and check it out. Go through the scale house, ask the guy a question, say, hey, I don't know about this, what do you think about this? What are my options? If you don't know, generally they will give you the answers you need, or they'll provide you with a phone number where you can ask the questions. But my clear understanding and my guidance to you as a driver, again, go through the scale house if it's open, and if you are operating under a dispatch load. Anything less than 20,000 pounds is still the same to me and to the company. Our policy is, if you're dispatched, go through a scale. Go get inspected. If you're under 20,000 pounds, you must go through a scale. If you're under dispatch. If you're over 20,000 pounds, it's already, it's yes, obviously you must automatically go through a scale, especially if you're a commercial driver. So anytime you are in personal convenience, you don't have to go through a scale. You're going to your first duty station, or the first location you're picking up your load. Personally, our company does not count. You're not actually getting paid for the time to drive to your pickup location if you're an independent contractor. If you're a company driver, you are getting paid, and you are getting paid by the hour or by the mileage. So at that moment, you're already under ELD, and you must automatically go through the scale, even if you are not over 20,000 or under load. So I know it's a little confusing, but I would suggest, if you have questions about this ELD and scale house inspection, you gotta call us and get explanation. The simple breakdown: go through the scale anytime you have a concern. If you are under dispatch, no matter if you're an independent contractor or a company driver, if you're under dispatch, go through the scale. If you're not under dispatch and you're running under personal convenience, you don't have to, as per our company policy. All right, guys, so we are here at the shipper, and we just arrived. As you have seen, we've been using this unit to make our travels, and we arrived at the shipper here in the city of their domicile or their business, and we're going to be picking up this tiny home here, which is also a oversized load, not as heavy as some of the other ones. And so when we arrived, immediately we kind of made contact with the foreman. We identify the unit itself. We talk about the concerns we have with the size of the unit. We look at the bill of lading documents, and we examine the unit briefly, and then we do a full inspection on it. But generally, there's two units here. Which is which? Well, that would be up to the customer. So you have to make contact with the foreman to make certain that you pick the right unit that needs to be delivered. In this case, this is a 15,000 pound unit that is about 30 something feet in length. Again, it's about 10 feet wide. It's 4 axles on the unit itself. It's also 13.6. It's not as high as the other ones, but it's got a deck up in the front, so the balance of the tongue weight versus the entire weight may fluctuate. So you gotta know the approximation. Generally, you have, like I said in previous videos, 10% of the tongue weight 10% of the total weight is the tongue weight. But in park models, tiny homes, and the manufactured homes, that's not always accurate because they manufacture them differently than RVs. But that said, it should definitely be under about 2,500 pounds on the tongue weight. And with that in mind, our unit should be able to manage that 1 ton dually back there. We're going to configure that as well to make certain that we have the right balance and the unit is leveled. And we're going to start that right now. generally we back up to the unit, but before we get really close to it, we make certain we're lined up with the ball hitch and our ball, and then we may have to change the hitch so that way it actually fits the height of the ball adapter here. So that's why we always pause before we get real close to it, because we may end up having to move things around, especially when we interchange between units. So at this point I'm going to continue. I came in and examined the positioning, the leveling, and I'll continue backing in until I get real close to the actual ball. When in doubt, always have a ground guide. We generally have a backup camera that we use to control, the backing power. But in this case, we're going to just simply slightly adjust the hitch assembly to make certain that it's balanced and leveled, not that the tongue is higher and the ball is lower, so it's not going to tilt down. It should be leveled completely all the way across. However, we're sitting on an incline, a little bit of a beveled lot right here, so we really can't exactly know how it's sitting until the unit is leveled. So that may be need, we may need to correct that. But right now, the unit seems to be leveled. Our hitch ball needs to be lifted up a little bit, and we should be good to go after that. Little bit. So just because I want to show you what I'm actually doing, hopefully the camera stays put. I'll put this little thing to hold it in place. Anyway, we have to adjust the hitch. You see the balance here of the ball is right here. So we need to raise up the hitch assembly to better equip the balance of the load itself. And that means we got to take it off and lift it up. So you got the pins, you get in and you adjust your hitch assembly so that way it actually sits much higher off. That way it's connected completely and leveled at the same level. The actual coupling device with the ball is at the same level on the same platform. You have to adjust the hitch assembly in some cases. In this case, we just did that. Now that we've adjusted it, obviously we want to make sure we put the pins in place and lock in the locking pins, and make certain that the unit is stable. There's also a adjustment screw back here for the purpose of adjusting the tightness of the ball. And so now it's all adjusted, it's leveled. The only other thing is we could do is reinforce this, and we will do that as well to add for additional support. And in most cases you don't have to worry about those things, but in this case where we haul various loads that are heavy, we actually add the additional reinforcement as a form of protection for the load to make certain that we have the balance. Sometimes you can use the load bars or the sway bars for that purpose, but they don't do a lot about the tongue and the ball reinforcement. The sway bars actually put more push force into the hitch. They actually create a pinch like so, a pressure, and that puts pressure on here, and of course puts pressure in here, so it kind of does that, and there's more pressure downwards with the sway bars. Sometimes you can get the right sway bars and they will allow you for better support, but in this case what you really want to do is lift up the force, so create an upwards force so this hitch can sustain bumping weights going down, whatever they may be,
25, 35, 40, 4,500 pounds. So we're gonna do that here shortly.
Okay, so now that we've made all the adjustments and adapting the hitch assembly, we've put in these binders for supporting the and bracketing the actual insert, so it's pushing upwards. These are 9,500 pound of torque pressure going upwards. 2 binders to reinforce this supposedly oversized load, just to give it additional support on this hitch adapter that's the insert that's over here. So we've got the hitch adapter, which is rated for about 2,500 pounds, and these 2 binders also pushing upwards. The ball is rated for, I believe, 15,000 pounds or 10,000 pounds. This is about 16,000 pound load. And so we're all secure here. As you can see, we've got chains that are hooked into these binders that are holding the wrapped underneath and pushing upwards. So that gives it additional securement. We're gonna go up the street and actually zip tie these chains so they don't dangle. The cross breakaway chains are in place. The breakaway line, or the trailer brake line is taped to the unit, and we've got the electrical line as well. Made sure that that's in place. We got the landing gear up, and all that's left is to actually put a oversized sign in the back, and then get up on the road. So here we go. Now we're heading out. We're going to take that oversized load sign that's back there and put it on the back as well. One more thing, like I always say, is make sure you get your bill of lading signed by the customer. Make sure you have your dispatch and your log sheets in place, and that you have all the paperwork you require for the travel, especially when you're pulling an oversized load. Make sure your ELD is already configured so you can get on the road and on duty. So all this time I've been on duty in my ELD. I've accumulated about an hour of pre-trip and setup and loading, and now I'm about to, you can see the you can't see, I'm gonna put in the mirror, but you can see the load back there. I'm parked currently, and I'm gonna go on duty driving at this moment with my ELD. But I've got my log sheets, I've got my bill of lading in place. The customer signed off releasing, or this is the shipper releasing the unit to us. The oversized signs are in place, the load is secured, and I'm ready to get on the road and head on to my destination. In about 3 hours, I will be taking a break, a 30-minute required break. And after my 30-minute required break, I'm going to continue en route to my destination, which ELD automatically gives you the additional hours once you take your 30-minute break. Usually I take about 3 hours before I take my first break, and then I continue until I get to my destination, unless I run out of hours. So that's how the ELD system works. That's how our tiny home pickup delivery process works. So I'm going to show you guys en route a little bit about our trip, if we can see, as long as it doesn't get dark, and hopefully we don't have snow, or as much snow, or any snow at all on the mountains. But going through mountains at night through snow, it's a little concerning, but we do have chains if we need them. Otherwise, we should be making it in the morning at California. And so with that in mind, let's go. Okay, so having stopped here for a break at the local truck stop, we again checked our hitch ball and assembly, the drop hitch, and the reinforcement that we created here. Everything is tight, everything is as they should be. You know, there's nothing loose. The unit, the trailer itself, is secure. We also checked the tire pressure in all the tires, making sure they're 65 psi's. We just left the Flying J truck stop right there. We also topped off with fuel and made sure that we got enough fuel for the hill. We're not far away from California, but we're still pretty far, and it's coming down a little bit here and there, a little bit flaky of snow, you know, some sleet is coming down, so we're very likely going to experience snow up on top of the hills. We double checked the marker lights, we double checked the load. We spent 30 minutes just basically on duty, not driving, and that way it resets the unit. We made sure our oversized signs are still intact and that all the elements of this transport are still in place. Now our ELD is telling us that we're on duty right now for the next 30 minutes. Well, for the 30-minute increment, we're probably about 3 more minutes and we can get back on the road. Our ELD is actually the thing that tells all DOT guys how we're doing, how many hours we're operating, how many hours we're taking break. So that's the electronic data system. The general inspection is done by I visually inspecting all the elements of the load itself, making certain that the oversized sign is still intact on the back, making certain that all the tires are still inflated, making certain that everything is still good, especially hitch assembly. Those things you got to manually come out here and inspect physically to look over. And once you inspect everything, I would say every 250 miles, usually 3 hours or 250 miles, come out and take a look. You know, we generally find some things in the way, like sometimes you'll find the electrical 7-way a little looser than needs to be, so you'll have to adjust that. Not in this case. Right now we're pretty secure, we're pretty tight. I was just double checking these ratchets or these binders. Everything is as it should be. Let's hopefully there's not any snow up on the hill, or at least if we can get through before it comes down to, apparently it's supposed to come down pretty bad here in the next few hours or so. We're gonna try to get through before that happens, but we still gotta wait on the ELD to complete the 30-minute break. Once that's completed, we carry on. Well, just like that, you know, well, it appears that we have gotten closer to the snow line, and from the communication over the CB radio, it sounds to me like Ashland, or you know, up on the top of the mountain, it's coming down quite a bit. There's 2 inches of snow up there, and guidance by DOT and by State Patrol. We're on the valley here, still about 70 miles away from Medford, going southbound on I-5, and then it's coming down. It's just sleet, but it's only 37 degrees over here, so it's not holding. However, sleet does get slick, so you got to take extra precautions to drive safely, especially with an oversized load. And let's see how it's going to go, and hopefully we can get through without too much turmoil. We are hoping that the snow up north is not too thick for us to get through without having to put chains. But considering the sleet down here in the valley, it's likely there's a lot of snow up on top. So that said, you know, you got to be ready pretty much for anything. We got our chains. If you know, we have to drive a little slower, then we'll have to do so. As long as the road is open, we should be able to make it through. So we're still in the valley, and it's coming down quite a bit. Obviously, winter road conditions, carry chain signs were all over the place. You know, it's up the road. Apparently, it said that the fastest speed limit is 20 miles per hour. So for the next 16 miles, we're going to be doing a little slower than 65. And it looks like everybody's trying now really hard to slow down. And you know, we're still doing about 55 right now. But it looks like a lot of road up ahead is being handled by trucks and vehicles that want to just simply take a break for now. It is quite mesmerizing to look at the snow coming down in your windshield, and keeping focus is it's very hard, you know, sometimes, especially with heavy sleet coming down, where to the point where you're unable to see outside even with your lights on normal dim. So that said, it's one of those areas that, you know, you just got to get through. Snow is part of our nature. and we gotta just manage to make it through various rain, snow, sleet, all those things safely. And so at this moment we are traveling still southbound, still in the valley, haven't yet climbed anything, and we should be expecting snow up at the top, but the valley is pretty, well, it's 37 degrees, so it's not really sticking, but it's coming down pretty bad. So hopefully it's not super bad up at the top. I was listening to the weatherman on the radio here locally in the area saying that this snow is coming back down, or coming down starting at 10 p.m. Well, what is it? It's 7 in the evening, 6:44, and it began coming down about an hour ago with a constant flow here recently without break. So luckily it's just not cold enough down in the valley to stick, but hopefully as we climb it's not going to be too treacherous, and we'll put chains up if needed to be, and we'll take our time and make our ascent, meaning climb, and then on the other side of the mountain we'll make our descent slowly and continue safely. So I've been at this for a while here, still in the valley, and it's really hard to stay focused to the road, you guys, with the snow blowing so fast and so thick. Don't know where the road is and where it ends, where the soft snow is and where the additional stuff is at. And so as you watch the road, you get into this daze because of the snow coming down, and so you got to constantly look in your side mirrors and actually to the side to see if you're still traveling, and you can't take your eyes off the road, and it's really exhausting. So whenever you can, take a break, take a break, especially if you can't see at night. Take a break, refresh, and start back up at it again. Generally, this area is always like this, and without a little bit of endurance and break in between, it gets difficult to get through, especially at night with heavy amounts of snow coming down. Vehicles parked, and then the unit is right over there. We just unhooked. This is a 31-footer oversized load. Dillon Beach, California. We dropped it off for them to relocate. This is what it looks like. We went through some snow, some harsh weather, but we made it over here safely and sound. The hardest part was managing that heavy snow coming down and seeing through the night. But here it is, unhooked, unloaded, ready for the customer.